Hello, everybody, and welcome back to this week's Stoke. I hope you all are enjoying your summers like I am, but really we're excited to get you the content back that you all love and deserve, as we really are kind of going to focus in on a series here on off-season training, because realistically, you need off-season training to make those gains when you finally get back on snow. So I'm super excited to start off our summer series with Cam Smith, who started Thrival Muscle Recovery, and he's going to kind of go through some of the importance of why you need to make sure that your muscles are working to their full capacity, and also really how to release your Psoas, which is where this all started. So before we dive in, Cam, and thank you so much for your time for coming on, I really think it's important to talk about who you are and why you started this Thrival Muscle Recovery business in the first place.
Thank you so much for having me, Parker. And yeah, I'm a ski racer. I grew up in Squaw Valley in Sugar Bowl, out west, Bay Area specifically. And then I went to Burke Mountain Academy. I actually shared a year with Parker, which is pretty funny, and spent 3 years there, graduated Burke, took 2 gap years in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, and now I ski for Boston College.
Another thing we have in common, by the way.
Exactly. And so I've spent my whole life ski racing. I've spent my whole life working out. And the way Thrival started was actually when the pandemic hit. Races were completely canceled, and that season I had really struggled with back pain. I spent that whole year at the chiropractor, at the masseuse, working on my Quadratus Lumborum muscle. That muscle runs from your rib cage down to the top of your pelvis, and it's a nasty muscle when it's tight, and it really limited actually my training. I could only take 2 or 3 runs in a course a day, but I was able to ski that whole season. I had a good season, but I wanted to find a permanent fix to that muscle, and that wasn't as expensive as going to the masseuse every week. So that's how Thrival started. And next thing you know, we had months off because of COVID, and 4 months after the original idea and hundreds and hundreds of prototypes, we came up with Thrival. And I think we came up with the best self-myofascial release tool. Myofascial release is basically when a masseuse presses on a muscle really, really hard, and they do it for a certain amount of time, between 30 and 60 seconds. Sometimes it can even be 10 seconds, but they do it for an extended period of time until the muscle releases. And we looked on the market, we tried every single tool that was out there. We spent thousands in buying tools, and we couldn't find, we found aspects of each tool that worked, but we couldn't find something that worked holistically and did everything that we wanted it to. So next thing you know, we had 4 3D printers in the basement, Doom and I, and yeah, 4 months later, we had a design. So
you've talked about a couple of different things here, and I think what we need to do a little bit is talk about how ski racing and myofascial release really come together all the time. So a common term in ski racing is something like GS back, or just even having a sore back in general. So that being said, you talked about how a masseuse is able to kind of dig into those muscles and release them. So what does your tool do that makes it so it's not an actual physical person using their hands to release those muscles?
So I have a Thrival right here. This is the big board. This is called the Thrival release board. And this has the meat grinders attached to it. It's actually a very simple tool. It just pops in to whichever slot you want, and you can change the setting between the 2 heads. This is called the meat grinder, and the meat grinder mimics the hand of a therapist. So we were trying to come up with a tool that basically could replicate that masseuse feeling of deep tissue myofascial release. And we found that no other tool, every other tool had a straight up and down angle, and no masseuse releases certain muscles with a straight up and down angle. So we had to come up with something that actually replicated the hand of a therapist. And that's how the meat grinder is born. And this thing is used by tons of therapists. And we actually have a very well-renowned chiropractor who helped design the product with us. The width of the head, every single part of this product is intentional to release muscles in your body. But to go back to your point on how GS back and skiing related aspects, skiing is a very torsionally related sport where you're torquing your body with hundreds of pounds of force running through your system. And that is, and it's very dynamic as well. So you have a lot of weight coming through or force coming through your body at very short periods of time, and that can really lead to muscle tension. The Psoas muscle, specifically how it started, we actually started as a Psoas muscle company. That is one muscle. This tool does the best for the psoas of any other product, but it's also the best for muscles like your glutes and your back. I'll get into that later. But the psoas specifically runs from the trochanter of your feet. I have a little diagram right here.
Yep, bring that out.
Yeah. So the psoas runs from the trochanter of your femur, which is that big ball on your hip ball, and it runs right past the corner of your hip bone.
Yeah.
And from this point to your lower back is the psoas. The specific, like the way I like to think about it is, imagine like a tent pole, and it has the strings that keep the tent pole from tipping over. The psoas is the strings of the tent pole. So if those muscles are really tight, they pull on your back. It feels like your rib cage is almost like sucked down to your pelvis when it's really tight. So if you can release this muscle, it'll loosen up your back and cause less tension in your quadratus lumborum. This is your quadratus lumborum. Yep. And this is, people always say, it's in my lower back. It's kind of like muscles towards the side. That's usually what GS back is. And that's this muscle right here. When the psoas is really tight, it causes it pulls on your lower back, and then your quadratus lumborum doesn't want you to get into that position where you have that hunchback feeling. So then the quadratus lumborum locks up as well. So they're basically playing tug of war on your lower spine. And if I kept going to the masseuse and asking them, like, geez, like my lower back really hurts, and they kept working on my psoas. I was so frustrated. I was like, work on the area that actually hurts. But they kept telling me it's your hip flexors. And as soon as I did consistent release, like I figured out how to release my psoas in different ways that were really, like with kettlebells, like it was really not practical, but I figured it out. That's when my back pain went away. So if you can figure out how to release your hip flexor, generally your back pain will go away.
And so then boom, cue the Thrival Muscle Recovery tool. So can you now explain how you use it and the proper technique to actually release your psoas muscle? Because a lot of times people talk about rolling out their muscles as a form of recovery. And you see kids just rolling back and forth, kind of hoping that that's going to move any of the issue. So I think any sort of description of like how long you're supposed to lay on it, how you're supposed to lay on it will be super helpful with actually releasing that important part that you're trying to release.
So you want to find the corners of your hip bones. Right inside of that is where your psoas starts. So that's kind of like right about here. Let me hold it. Yeah, right about here on the psoas. So if you can find we have over 30 videos on our website too. And we have an instructional manual that's about to come out. But Dan Rukeyser walks through with actually River Radamus, who's one of our athletes, and also CrossFitters as well. But we have a renowned chiropractor who walks you through the specific ways to release each individual muscle, whether it's your neck, your back, your glutes, your piriformis. It could be your IT band, your calf. It's great actually for compartment syndrome as well, which is a very common sports injury for skiing. But the specific way you release your psoas, that's one specific application, but you go just inside of your hip bones and you try to find a tubular muscle that runs from that corner to your lower back. And when you find that, you usually know pretty quickly because it's pretty painful. But yeah, that releasing that muscle is one of the first steps to releasing back pain. The other one is your sacrum. You can release the muscle with the Thrival. You can put it at a setting of 1 and 2 or 1 and 1 and get the tendons that run from your sacrum. And it actually pops my sacrum too, which feels really good. Or you can get the piriformis, which runs from the outside of your hip into, it's like one of the worst glute muscles and works for rotation of your femur. So there's a lot of applications for Thrival, and I mean, it would take hours to go, like it literally takes hours to go through all the specific ways, but yeah, I could go through the piriformis one too. There's different ways to manipulate your body on the product. So you lay down And the nicest thing, I'll give one thing: if anyone who's lazy for like stretching and stuff, this is your product, because I hate, like, have you ever used like a lacrosse ball on your butt? It's the worst. You have to prop yourself up. You have to do one side at a time. It's just painful and not really comfortable. This thing is painful, but you can at least relax on it. You can get both sides at once. So you move the heads, like you move the heads to the right setting for your butt, and then you lay down on it with your back on the ground. And I'll literally just scroll Instagram for 5 minutes on my butt and move my hips in different ways. Then I just move the product an inch, and then I'm getting a completely different area of my glute. So foam rolling is great. I don't want to discourage foam rolling at all. It's actually really good, but it's for very specific things, and it doesn't actually release a lot of them. It's good for general. It's moving blood. Foam rolling is basically for moving blood. If you're trying to release a very tight, specific area, this is your bet. This is your best bet.
Yeah, and it's cool because you can incorporate so many different muscle releases with just one tool. And I think that that's what's really helpful for the ski community, is that you can perform at your best when your body is at its best, right? And so if you're really tight in your glutes, in your psoas, all that kind of stuff, you're going to get back on snow and not be able to move after doing all this work to get ready to be back on snow. So I think that that's key, to be able to have your product that allows you to release every part of your body essentially with minimal effort, a little bit of pain, but that's part of it. And be able to get that outcome that you're looking for. So that's a really neat part of what you've created here.
And the key is education as well, like understanding what you're doing with it. Like, I can explain all the different ways you can move your body on the product, but the best way to do that is go to the videos that we have or the manual that we're coming out with. And that'll explain all the different ways you manipulate your body and put where to place the product. Like, I use different settings for different parts of my body. Originally, when we came up with Thrival, we just wanted a tool that worked for everyone on the Psoas. But then once we started realizing, geez, this isn't just a Psoas tool. This is more than a Psoas tool. And you can bring them all the way in close enough to get your neck, but then you can go all the way out far enough where the average person can't even reach that area, but it'll work to the outer ends of your glutes. And also, one other thing to highlight is we're coming up. The first thing we realized with Thrival was that it was too big to put in your bag. We wanted it to make it so it fit for everyone. But the biggest complaint was that, from ski racers specifically, was that it's hard to bring places. So we're actually coming out in the next month or two with what's called the travel board. And it's so the main board is 8 slots on either side. So it's 16 total slots. This one is 5 slots on either side. And it's like this, and it breaks down into 2 pieces so that you can just fit it in your backpack really easily.
Yeah.
And you just do that, and then you pull it apart, and then it goes in your backpack, 2 halves. Boom. And there you go.
And so is the best time to do this before training or after training, or both? Are you supposed to be warm? Are you supposed to be cold? I think that's an important piece of how the muscles are actually going to react in the best way.
So it's you can do this honestly whenever. You can do it before or after. I prefer after training. I prefer when I'm like done and I just want to get to bed, like right before bed. The most ideal thing would to do before and after. You want to be warm if you can, but that's not necessarily, like, you can do it really whenever. Okay. It's really easy just to bring out, and it's like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and you can get 2 or 3 areas in probably 5 minutes. And that will be the key with Thrival is consistency. Yeah. You can't just expect to do it once and get a result. It's the same thing with any injury you have. If you're expecting a one-time fix, it's very rare that you're actually going to get it. And so the Dr. Dan Rukeyser, who's the one who helped us design Thrival, says that this thing can almost entirely take out therapists for myofascial release. Wow. If people were dedicated enough and consistent enough to use it. Yeah. So finding enough people to do, like, therapists are not going anywhere, I can tell you that. But people who consistently use this product, I guarantee will not be going to the therapist or the chiropractor nearly as much.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. And I think now we're going to take a little bit of a different turn now that we've gone through the uses of it, why it's important to ski racers. But I think other than that, your business has really blown up quite a bit. And now you're working with athletes outside of ski racing. So I'm kind of curious, have you noticed that they have similar needs to what ski racers have with different back pain, or do they have different needs that you need to fit? Kind of what are the similarities and differences with working with River Adamus, professional ski racer, and some of your CrossFit and UFC fighters?
Yeah, so each sport has different injuries, and that's Thrival's so versatile that it can transform into different injuries. Like it can get your rotator cuff for CrossFit where you're putting a barbell overhead with 250 pounds, or like with UFC, it can get parts in your shin. That's actually a use that used for Thrival as well. But the thing is, Thrival works for your whole body, so it really fits any sort of athlete. However, the thing that Thrival specializes in that like no Theragun or no Hyperice can get into is your torso area. Right. It's not able to do the same things Thrival is in your midline. And all of those sports require a lot of midline strength. If you're kicking a bag, you're going to be using your core, you're going to be using your hip flexors and your butt and your legs. And same with skiing, obviously it's so torsionally. And then also CrossFit. Anytime you're lifting heavy weights, you're using your midline extensively. And so Thrival is a great tool for that as well. So any sport you're using your midline, which is almost every sport, Thrival is a really good product for. Yeah, the thing about Thrival is we're trying to create a culture where people are able to find consistent results. And we're not looking for a one-time fix. We're looking for people who want to solve their pain points, but also if they want to gain more flexibility, they want to gain more mobility in their hips, this is a product for them as well. So that's kind of the culture behind it. And we're also trying, another aspect of it is the education, as I mentioned before, teaching people how to use the product and how to move their body. Like when you go to a massage therapist and they release a certain muscle in your body, they tell you to move your body while they're releasing the muscle. They'll very rarely just release one spot, or at least at a chiropractor. Maybe a massage therapist, they'll let you just lay there. But in a chiropractor, they release the muscle and they tell you to move your body in a certain way. And that's what we want to do at Thrival. We want people moving their body at the most optimal way.
Yeah, no, Cam, I think it's super helpful. And I can't thank you enough for your time and for going through this product with everyone, because again, in the grand scheme of things, if you can't move and you can't have your body performing at its optimal capacity, then you're not going to be able to perform on the hill or during off season. So I think really your key point that I'm boiling it down to is consistency and learning how to best kind of manage your body and be able to help stretch your muscles out and be in the best place you can be. And the off season is a perfect time for that. So Cam, thank you again so much for your time. I really loved trying to introduce this product to the community, but also diving down to the nitty gritty and the scientific details about the muscles. I think it'll be super beneficial. And to our sync community, I hope you guys got something out of this. I think it's really important that your muscles are firing and loose and ready to go. So I can't thank you enough, and I'll catch you all next time.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Parker, for having me, and see you guys.
Of course.